You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another episode of OverAnalyzing, the series where I take a more in-depth look at the fictional universes which I love. Finally jumping back into the Devilman universe and talking about something I've been meaning to talk about for quite a while on the channel, and that is Amon. Now, I'm going to stick with Amon as my pronunciation, but I know that it can also be pronounced Amon or Amon. Going with Amon, that's the way I've always said it, and that's the way I'll continue to say it. But for those of you who don't know who Amon is, how the fuck did you see Devilman? In all seriousness, Amon is the demon that Akira Fudo fuses with to become Devilman. Now, in the original story, not a whole lot is really known about Amon. We get little bits and pieces here and there, like knowing that he was a strong champion, he was one of the strongest demons. In the original, we see that Siren respected him. In the sequels, we would see that they had a romantic connection, but that wasn't really established in the first one. That was more so a thing that was established in Lady and Saga and a couple of the spin-offs. In fact, if we go through Shin Devilman, Amon actually had a thing with Nike, the goddess. Which, you know, some people might even think that's part of the main series, given the way that the Classic Collection and the Deluxe Edition and all the other subsequent versions have had. But again, I don't consider Shin Devilman part of the original, nor do I consider it canon, because, you know, it came out many years later and wasn't supposed to be, but that's a whole other topic for another day. Now, I've touched on this topic with Amon a few times in other videos in passing, or as like a minor point, but something I want to say about Amon is he has never had a good backstory, and he's had a bunch of them. There's been plenty of the spin-offs, sequels, and other stuff that have tried to give us more of Amon, and I've never really liked the way it's turned out. Firstly, a lot of these prequels will have Amon, like, look exactly like Akira, which I guess plays into the whole kind of fate angle that they kind of go for, I think, in Devilman Saga. But it's something that always drove me nuts, that, particularly in Demon Knight, that the demons just look like humans. Like, why? Why do the demons look like humans? Like, I understand they got their grotesque appearances through merging, but why did their base form before they merged have to look like human? Then, of course, they all worked for God, and then these other things that are kind of demonic come in and merge with them. Those other things that are kind of demonic should just be like the original demons, right? Like, why isn't Amon the thing that fuses? Like, why is the demonic entity not Amon? Why is the human Amon? Amon's also in love with this character named Yuria, who's actually the female half of Ryo, and is also reincarnated as Jun Fudo. And then the male half is a guy named Lucifer. It's a whole thing. I said this before in a couple of videos, but I honestly don't like Demon Knight. There are aspects I like of it. For instance, you know, since merging was established, I do like that it's like a werewolf and a dragon that Amon merges with to become how he currently looks. But I honestly think that the backstory from Amon the Dark Side of Devilman was cooler, even though I don't like that one really either. Amon the Dark Side of Devilman, once again, just has Amon look like fucking Akira for some reason. But then they introduced this really cool concept of this giant planet-sized demonic entity called Amon the Great, which merges with the current Amon to become Amon as we know him in Devilman. The Amon the Great thing is interesting, but I still think it's weird that we have to have the one that looks just like Akira. Not to mention the fact that the chapters get really fucking confusing and all over the place as Amon the Dark Side of Devilman goes on. It starts jumping around in a time loop and starts to get really boring in all honesty. Like, I need to go back and read the whole thing. I never finished it. But as I got into, like, the third volume, I kind of started to just get bored of it because it's just all over the fucking place. The closest we've had to a good Amon backstory was the 1972 anime series. The only thing with that is, that's not Amon. That's not Amon at all. That's a demon named Devilman. Now, you could argue, well, the name's different, but it's still Amon. But obviously, tonally, the 70s series is very different than any other version. So it just feels like a different character entirely. Like, granted, if we're going with and saying it's Amon, okay, in that case, that kind of worked, because I like that version. That backstory is my favorite version of the demon that becomes Devilman. Even though in that version he actually doesn't, like, Akira doesn't take over, it's that demon taking Akira's place. This would later be, like, expanded on in, like, Devilman Grimoire, but in that one it actually is Amon. And in all honesty, Grimoire actually had potential to do it right. But then at the end of Grimoire, there's all this weird, dumb shit with Solomon, where it reveals Akira and Amon are the same person, and they're also Solomon, and that demons aren't really demons, they're like other parts of yourself. Like, it's interesting in some aspects, but it just comes out of nowhere and has no build-up to it. For me, I've never seen Amon's backstory be executed in a way that was satisfactory to me. I always like picturing the character as he appears in Devilman, but for some reason, every time we see him in the past, he's just Akira, but not. And I hate that. I hate that it's just Akira, but not. Like, I want him to be a unique character. The thing about Amon is he's less of a character and more of a plot device, right? He's a thing that Akira takes as a power. So, you don't really get a whole lot of depth to him. You get little glimpses of his past here and there. But, like, for instance, in the 72 anime, Devilman's friendship with Drongo, that's something I loved. I would love to see something build on that. Like, I know that's exclusive to that version, and I know that Drongo is in Grimoire, but that isn't really a thing. Like, Drongo's in Grimoire, his name was changed to Nyx, and he's not Devilman's friend. Instead, he was, like, enemies with Amon. Like, he respected him, but wanted to fight him. Whereas in the 72 anime, it was much better because, you know, he was a friend, and these two friends who actually were best friends had to fight each other to the death. And while it's true I haven't read absolutely every spin-off or anything, I haven't read Hiruda Devilman, so maybe it's actually Amon in that too. And I haven't read Isago Devilman or Devilman Battler. There's a bunch of them that I haven't read out there, so it's possible that Amon has a good backstory out there somewhere. As I said, in my view, the closest we've got is the 72 anime, but unfortunately, for some reason, we just can't get Amon as a distinct character. He always just has to be Akira, but not. And that's what I think is really the problem with Amon. He's such an interesting and fascinating concept of a character that has never really been given his own time to be his own character. But anyway, that's all I really had to say. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles. Hello, Rio, my old friend. How the hell you been keeping then?
Fuck you!
Nagumo,